Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the channel. I'm Stylosa, and in today's video we're going to take a look at some of the potential abilities of Ramattra. Now, this is taken from a press event which was held in Korea, I believe yesterday. So we've got some very loose translations of these abilities. So I think what we can do is try and work out what these abilities actually do. So the first ability is this. Now they're calling it Void Accelerator Omnic Form, and they say this is the default form of Ramattra, and it says that left click fires a projectile that advances in a certain shape. I'm not too sure what that means. And right click creates a barrier at the target location. Now, I believe this is the staff weapon. It's got to be, because in this screenshot we've got from the press pack of Ramattra, these are official Blizzard screenshots, we can see some sort of projectile coming out from the staff. So it makes sense that this is the I guess the projectile. Now it does say fires or advances in a certain shape. I'm not too sure what that means. I can't see him firing like triangles or squares or whatever. It's got to be like a ball, hasn't it, of energy that fires out. I don't know, but we'll have to wait and see what that is. But still pretty cool that we can kind of break that down. Now the next part of this is create a barrier at a target location. Now, if you look at the UI here on this screenshot, you can see the barrier icon. However, we do not have any screenshots of this barrier. We also don't have any idea what this barrier actually does in terms of its health, how long it lasts for, what abilities it can block, or anything like that, or its size. We don't know anything about this, but this is his other ability that he can do in this form. Next up is this ability, which they're calling Vortex of Gluttony, which doesn't sound right to me, but whatever. This is the E ability, and this launches nanospheres, whatever they are. It explodes on contact with the ground, creating a damaging force field. Now, what this might mean is the nanosphere might be like a grenade. It might be like an grenade. Actually, it probably is, right? Where he throws this thing out, it hits the ground, it explodes, and it creates a damaging force field. Enemies within the force field are pulled towards the ground. Now, this does make sense. In two of the screenshots, you can see Echo and Farah, and it looks like they're being pulled to the ground, especially Farah, because you can see the jets from her, well, the smoke from her jets are actually going in a downward motion, indicating she's being pulled down to the ground. And also, why would they show two aerial characters in this? So yeah, it must be part of the kit. And the movement speed of enemies under the influence of the force field is slowed. So what is interesting about these three abilities, that these make up the Omnic form, the form of Ramattra where he's not a tank. He's more of a, I don't know, like a controller. So he's got this ranged primary fire. He's got a barrier he can deploy, and also he can slow damage and pull targets out of the sky with his E ability. That sounds funky. Next up, we've got Nemesis Form. Now, it calls this chastisement. I can't imagine that's the name of the ability. It might be. I don't know. Again, remember, there's a lot of translation going back and forth here, so there's going to be things that are lost, details that are lost, and things that we can kind of maybe we can put together. I don't know. Maybe it's called that. I don't know. Anyway, it's the form change this ability is. So what they're saying is this is on shift and transforms into Nemesis Form for about 8 seconds and uses the following skills. It is not disclosed how many seconds the form can be held. Now, what is interesting here is the screenshot I'm showing you guys is very clearly showing the block ability. Look, you can see in the bottom right hand corner of the screen the two arms crossed. That's being activated, but also the shift ability is activated as well, so it is a little bit confusing. But I think the block's being activated. You can see a timer in the middle of the screen. A quarter of that timer has gone, which means there's 6 seconds left, which means 8 seconds. So I think that this block ability is 8 seconds, not the actual tank Nemesis Form, because wouldn't that be kind of a bit crap if you just went into it for 8 seconds as a tank? That's not going to work. So I think Ramattra, or at least this is how I would go for it, would be he can change his form and he stays in that form until he swaps back into his other form, and then there's some sort of cooldown. So maybe here it's an 8-second cooldown between swapping. So if you swap from the Omnic form to this form and then you swap back to the Omnic form, it's going to be another 8 seconds before you can go back into this Nemesis form. You can't just swap instantly back and forth through them, because that might be ridiculously OP. But I still don't think this is just something that lasts for 8 seconds. That sounds really weird, and it would make him play very, very strange. I think if you could only be a tank for 8 seconds, that's not great. It'd be like Bastion, where he's only a threat when he's in his little tank mode. When he's not in tank mode, it's like, well, whatever, you may as well just kill him. So I don't know, that to me seems a bit weird, but I'd like to see what you guys think in the comments below there. But I'm kind of erring on the thought of the block's probably 8 seconds, and maybe there's an 8-second delay. swapping the forms, but when you're in a form, surely you've got to stay in that form. Left click, it says, attacks with fists forward, generating a shockwave each time the fist is raised. Shockwave penetrates enemies in front. This you can kind of see on the visual effect in this screenshot. So you can see like this energy wave emanating from the fist. So this, again, is kind of funky. This must be almost like a more, like a, how can I explain? It's like a longer melee attack instead of, like, think of Reinhardt. It's like left to right. It's like a big horizontal. Think of more like a more, it's not vertical, but a more straightforward. I'm really explaining this terribly, but a melee attack that's longer in front of you than it is wide. Maybe that's what this is. So you're punching forward, and yeah, you punch targets that are right on top of you, but the energy goes through those targets and hits the targets in the back. What'll be interesting will be to see if it does the same amount of damage. Is it more damage to the target in the front and less at the back? Does this go through barriers? There's loads of things with this, but I think this is really cool, and this is the kind of thing I'd like to see when they're doing stuff for melee heroes as well. Just make them a little bit different. So I like that. That sounds like a really cool ability. The right click, now this is the block. So they say reduces movement speed but greatly reduces damage from the front. When in Nemesis form, gain 150 additional defense, increases total health from 450 to 600. So if this ability heavily reduces your movement speed, it's not going to be something you're going to use to engage. And one thing I can kind of, well, it already looks like, I mean, if these abilities are accurate, but remember, they were taken from a panel which was held in Korea with, I believe, the Vice President of Overwatch, John Spector, and the General Manager of Overwatch, Walter Kong. And they were being asked what the abilities are, and they were saying to the Korean press, and then obviously we've got the translations back and forth. But there is no mention here of any kind of speed increase or anything like that. So this hero looks like he needs Lucio with him, probably, especially if he's getting a massive reduction in movement speed when he's using his tanking ability. And again, the other thing to note is when he's in this tank Nemesis form, he doesn't have access to the barrier. Again, we can see this because we can look at the UI when he's in this form. So he doesn't really offer much in the way of protection for his team. When he's in his tank form, he just becomes tankier himself, which I think is it's going to be interesting to see how this hero plays out. And finally, the ultimate. Now, we've got no screenshots of this, so we've got no idea what this looks like. But apparently, this is what it does. Automatically switches to Nemesis form, creating an energy zone around it. And in fact, actually, you know what? That plays into my thoughts on there must be a cooldown switching between forms. There's got to be, right? Because if this automatically puts you into Nemesis form, the only reason it would do that is if there was a cooldown on the form switch, not actually on being in the form, if that makes sense. So remember, if you had a cooldown, like if you were in Omnic form and then you switch to Nemesis form and then you switch back to Omnic form, but you've got an 8-second cooldown on that form, and then your ultimate comes online, you press Q and then suddenly you go back into Nemesis form. That's like a little bit of extra bonus to it. So yeah, that does actually make sense, doesn't it? Anyway, enemies within the energy zone take continuous damage. The duration is maintained as long as you deal damage to enemies within the energy zone. Okay, so this looks like a massive cloud of damage, a big area of effect, a big AoE, a big 360 AoE around Ramattra when he pops his ultimate, and it stays active so long as it's doing damage to enemies. But remember, when Ramattra's in this form, he doesn't have any movement speed increase. So again, if you've got a Lucio, throw him into the enemy team with this. He's just not going to die, is he? He's just going to keep doing damage to the enemy team. This sounds absolutely mental. Okay, all right, guys. Well, that's what we've got so far with the abilities of Ramattra. But I do have some more information here concerning the next heroes that are going to come to the game. I've got to say as well, a bit of a shout out to Overwatch Cavalry. They have the cleanest graphics. The graphics are actually better than the official Overwatch account. But they're awesome news source for Overwatch stuff that's happening and stuff like that. So go and check them out. There's a link in the video description below. Anyway, this is John Spector, one of the vice presidents of Overwatch. This is again from the event which was held in Korea. And he says that the next hero in Overwatch 2 will be a support hero, and that this hero is due in April 2023, which is Season 4 of Overwatch 2. Now, I've got some more info here because we're going to dig back into the archives and take a look at what was said in an AMA on Reddit about 5 months ago now. So this is from Aaron Keller, and this is what he says. Overwatch heroes are incredibly exciting. We pour our hearts and souls into every one that we create. Seeing the community's desire for more feels great to the team. We want more too, and I think that the question as to why there aren't more at release is reasonable. For context, development of Overwatch 2 was initially split between the PvE and PvP sides of the game, and the way it was scheduled was to get most parts of the game completed once the game was ready to ship. To be clear, there is no secret vault of completed heroes or other content that we're holding for future seasons. As we continue to iterate on the PvE side of the game, it meant that the schedule for PvP content and features went longer. Many of the features for PvE, such as the enemy units or hero talents, utilize the same resources on the team as heroes do. For us, it's more important to start shipping content as soon as we can, rather than holding the release of the game in order to create more heroes. This is also the reason why we're excited to go free to play and release content on a seasonal basis, namely to release content when it's finished rather than holding it to put it into a box. In order to succeed with our new long-term plan, we've grown and restructured the team, and we're over 3 times the size we were at launch. We have big plans for the game beyond new heroes, maps and game modes, and to accomplish these while we're still creating content for our seasons takes a lot of resources and a lot of planning. For instance, we have several heroes deep into development. The Season 2 hero is almost finished, which of course now we know is Ramattra, and we're in various stages of playtesting for the next 3 heroes, 2 of which are supports. So what we know from that is 2 of the next 3 heroes after Ramattra are supports, but the question is, what order are these heroes coming in? Well, there's actually another comment on this AMA, and somebody says this: I interpret it as beta is Sojourn, Junker Queen and support, which turned out to be Kiriko. Season 2 is a tank, which we now know is Ramattra, and then after 2/3 are support. And then Aaron Keller actually responds to this and says, this is the correct interpretation. Apologies for the lack of clarity earlier. So yeah, you can read this as the next 2 heroes that are coming to the game are support heroes. But the one thing we know for 100% fact, and that is, well, like it is 100% fact because they've literally just said it, is the next hero after Ramattra is a support, and that hero is coming out in April. I can't wait to see what this support is. We do need more support heroes as well, and I think it's kind of good that Blizzard are giving us heroes in roles that we need rather than just giving us loads of DPS heroes. I don't think they're ever going to be forgiven for making Echo a DPS, because surely Echo should have been a support. I think a lot of Echo's lore actually leans into her being a support rather than damage, maybe? I don't know, maybe I'm just losing my mind there, but her damage abilities are pretty funky, so that's probably why they decided to make it damage, because they just wanted a big laser beam. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. I've been Stylosa. If you enjoyed the video, then do subscribe to the channel, like, and all that good stuff, and I'll catch you lovely lot on the next one. See you soon.